What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and today we're going to be taking a look at the metagame from last week as we head into a brand new week in Marvel Snap, which means a new card, some new events, and so I wanted to take a look at last week's community gaming tournament. That's what we're looking at here first, and then we're also going to look at the general meta and some of the tools that Untapped has. We lost Lily already. She was bored just taking a look at this Excel sheet, and then we'll get into Untapped. Maybe we'll get her back for that portion of the video, but basically what I did is I tallied up every card that appeared in all of the deck lists in this week's community gaming tournament. There were 66 players in total, so I just thought of a way to make this a little bit easier to see and use some more of the space on the screen with these percents. But the first thing that we have to talk about is Jeff the Baby Landshark with 30 appearances over 66 decks, representing 45% of the players choosing to play Jeff the Baby Landshark. The card is just super versatile, and just in terms of like what decks Jeff can go in, but also the play style of Jeff, very, very versatile, which is why we see a 45% play rate, incredibly high. And I think that that is also what this can be a great resource for, is just noticing that Jeff and Mobius are great cards for anybody to spend your resources on, basically, is what I'm getting at. If you see these cards in spotlight caches, or potentially you want to spend your tokens on them as well, I think that these are both cards that show up reasonably often in spotlight caches, but I think that these are cards that every player is going to want in their collection, because you get Jeff, you get Mobius, and then you just got to find 10 other cards to put in your Marvel Snap deck, kind of, is one way to look at it. One other thing that I wanted to highlight up here at the top of the video is we see 17 Lokis, a little over 1/4 of the total field, and we also see 16 Blink. Basically, both of these are like cornerstones of decks where I would say, like the Agent Coulson, those are just going with all of the Lokis. The Leeches are probably mostly going with the Blinks, but I think you'll see some Blinks that are leechless and some Leeches appear without Blinks potentially. I didn't run down all the data on that, but this spreadsheet is in the video description if anybody wants to crunch some of those numbers and fact check me on some of those things themselves. But cards like Quinjet, of course, that is almost exclusively going to get paired with Loki. I think that Kitty Pryde and Angela are probably seeing a little bit of play without Loki, and not every Loki list is going to include them, but this is just a powerful combination of cards that we often see slotted into Loki lists, not typically something that we see in Blink, just because Kitty Pryde is awkward with like big curves where you want to play something that costs 6 on turn 6. But for any of those other decks that we might see, which it's hard to, like, even just like a good stuff deck that has like Craven and Ravonna, we can potentially see Angela and Kitty Pryde pop up into those decks. Angela is a combo with Ravonna, not typically one that sees a lot of play, but yeah, I think that that's why we see pretty high numbers for both of these. They mostly go into the Loki list that we're seeing. And to get to my point, Loki did not top 4 this event. Now, we looked at 2 tournaments last week, an open decklist one and a closed decklist one. The closed decklist one, I was not going to ask all 70 players to submit their decklist to me, because that would just take way too long, and most of them wouldn't wind up responding anyways. But we have all of the info here from the open decklist tournament, and Loki did not top 4 in this event for the data that we are looking at, which is pretty interesting. 1/4 of the players playing it, and Loki didn't top 4. And we might get some answers on that in the second part of this video, where we take a look at matchup specific data, which is a new feature on untapped.gg that they asked me to show off in this video. So we're gonna look at that in just a moment. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that Loki, 1/4 of the metagame, not in the top 4. Blink did make the top 4, and I believe if we take a look at the other tournament, which the data is not what we're looking at here. There was actually only one Blink deck in that tournament too, but that tournament was won by a Loki list. But for this tournament, no Loki in the top 4. So I think that that is at the very least interesting. One other thing that you might notice I've done here, I've got some cards in yellow, may have missed some, but basically I wanted to highlight tech cards, and we'll talk about those in a moment, but I'm just going to scroll down through this so that way we can see a little bit more of the data that we're looking at. And there are some interesting things that I wanted to talk about when we get into cards that aren't super represented here. Patriot at 4 players playing it, Thanos with only 4 players playing it. Both of these made it into the top 4 of this event. Hela, only 3 players playing it, and that's probably because in tournaments, especially open list tournaments, players much prefer to have answers for things that their opponents are trying to do rather than just develop a bunch of threats. But the reason that I wanted to touch on this Hela specifically, again, we can probably expect that the metagame of this tournament is fairly representative of the metagame of the closed deck list tournament as well, and that did have a Hela list in the top 4. So with only 3 players playing it, I would say Hela is doing pretty well for that little representation. We also see, this is kind of interesting, Heimdall and Human Torch. Now, Heimdall can get played in a variety of things, and I think probably at least 2 of these Human Torches were in Phoenix Force decks, which are actually a pretty powerful deck, but we can also see like 3 daggers. Again, that might end like 3 Ghost Spiders. So I'm seeing 3 of a lot of different move cards here, and like I said, you can check out the full data for every single deck list in this tournament if you are so inclined. But I'm just looking at the broad strokes here, and it seems like people still like Move, despite Move not being, oh sorry, the Human Torch might have been just off screen here. I think that Move isn't that strong, right? I'm not a huge fan of Move. I've really like never played it, to be totally honest. And like Ronin, it's interesting just to see if you're like curious, and that's kind of why I'm scrolling through a lot of this pretty slowly. It's kind of curious to just see what players did choose to show up with, right? Like people are saying Ronin, they are just as willing to play as Hela right now. And the metagame is pretty wide open with a lot of players playing a bunch of different things. There's also 2 dominoes in this entire tournament, and of course it was won by a domino Blink deck. Oh yeah, and 2 cloaks up here as well. I do not think domino is good. Talked about it in the previous video. I think that there are some reasons that people are incentivized to play domino. I still think it's awkward in that, sure, it increases the power of your Blink and Jubilee, but domino, in the same way that Quicksilver does, domino does decrease your chances to draw Blink. But still, only 2 people playing it in this tournament, and one was able to win the whole thing. So maybe they have done more math than I to realize domino is pretty good. Yeah, here's those 2 Phoenix Force decks as well. And the other thing that I wanted to draw attention to, only 1 copy of Sauron. Sauron got 4th place in this event. So good on the Sauron player. And then I also wanted to highlight some things that saw 0 play. I'm not going to touch on all of these, of course. There are some pretty reasonable cards here. Miss Marvel, Fall from Grace, 0 people playing it in this entire event. What's going on there? Miss Marvel is definitely not this bad, but 0 copies among the entire tournament. However, there were also 0 copies of Shuri, which is not typically that played of a card. It's typically not that represented. Just wanted to talk on it like, hey, maybe some people should be playing Shuri, but definitely, I think some people should be playing Silver Surfer. This has been my pet deck. If you've seen some of my content recently on the channel, and by recently I mean like the past 2 seasons, because Silver Surfer has been really, really good for a decent amount of time now. And we'll take take a look at not just my opinion, but some data to back up that opinion when we get into the untapped of it all. But Silver Surfer, I think, is really, really strong, and probably a mistake that nobody is running it in tournaments. Now, Silver Surfer is kind of like a Hela, that it's trying to do its thing and it's not necessarily trying to interact as much, but like, you can interact while playing Silver Surfer. Mobius costs 3, Nocturne now costs 3, so there's tons of ways to interact at the 3 cost slot, and I am curious if we could see Silver Surfer like, hey, just give me one person playing Silver Surfer and we'll see how it does. Maybe that person should be me. Should I start entering in these tournaments with Silver Surfer and seeing how we can do? And then also, Fall from Grace down here, it's sorted alphabetically, of course, but Zabu with 0 copies showing up across the tournament, pretty awkward. Also, no non-Hela discard, no Apocalypse, and no MODOK either. I do think that we could potentially see MODOK discard. Oh yeah, no Mr. Negative. Yeah, kind of interesting. So, like I said, feel free to take a look at this data. I now have this set up so that, like, I did not count all of these by hand. This is one of my friends that I play the Genius style games with was nice enough to, all of those nerds are like so good with spreadsheets and stuff. So one of them was kind enough to set this up. So now when I do tournament reports, I should be also able to do metagame breakdowns right in those videos. And I'm just going to scroll up slowly through this. Oh yeah, I also wanted to talk about some tech. So there's a really interesting thing going on, and again, I might miss some tech cards here. You could also argue like, okay, is Annihilus a tech card? Not really, but it kind of is. It's a good card against Annihilus at the very least. Professor X is actually kind of a tech card, despite also being like a pretty aggressive card in its own right. So maybe that one should get a nod, and then I think the rest of this is just good stuff. Nocturne's a tech card against Magic, and Jeff is kind of a tech card against Professor X at the very least, and then also just interesting, you're not playing Jeff for points, you're playing it because it interacts favorably with a number of locations and things like that. But for the most part, I think we got the big tech cards here: Mobius, Shang-Chi, Leech, Snowguard, and Enchantress. And the reason that I wanted to highlight them is actually for 2 reasons. One, I brought up that Loki was in 1/4 of the decks and did not put a single Loki in the top 4. Neither did Shang-Chi, which is kind of crazy. And I think that is for 2 reasons. One, a lot of these Shang-Chis are in Loki lists. Another reason is that Shang-Chi being the top tech card that people think about in Marvel Snap means that it's the top tech card that people think about when they are building their decks. And that is why I've specifically highlighted these tech cards, because there's a lot of Leech running around. And that's probably at least part of the reason why we're not seeing Silver Surfer in these tournaments. So maybe that's why. Silver Surfer is not, just people did not want to run Silver Surfer into Leech all day. Silver Surfer lists also play Serra, so Mobius is kind of keeping them in check. And you know what, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Silver Surfer deserves to be at the bottom of the metagame report here with 0 copies played. But when you have an idea of which tech cards people are playing, it gives you a better idea of which cards you should be playing yourself. And seeing that the most played tech card is Mobius, 1/3 of the deck's playing Mobius, and now some of those Mobiuses are going to be inside of Loki lists, but it starts to paint a little bit bigger of a picture of why Loki did not perform so well, because there was so much tech against Loki. So I think that this specifically tech is really good to keep in mind when you look at stats on a tournament report like this, or as we're going to look at stats on untapped.gg. If you can avoid the common tech, if you're not playing ongoing or on reveal abilities, which is hard to dodge both ends of that spectrum. But if you were able to do so, then you found a really nice position for yourself. Enchantress not like super highly represented either, though you could argue that Enchantress's 11 plus Rogue's 5, because people are probably playing one or the other, that does make up a pretty sizable, about 1/4 of the metagame as well. And like the combined is actually about the same as Leech, or more than Leech, more common than Leech. So I just wanted to kind of present all of this data. And the last thing that I wanted to say about tech cards specifically is that they are a little bit cyclical. So people play a bunch of Shang-Chi, so then people cut the amount of Shang-Chi-able cards that they're playing. We'll just say Scar cards, people cut their Scar cards, so then people cut Shang-Chi, so then people play more Scar cards, and then people play more Shang-Chi. So it does kind of go in these patterns where people are constantly chasing each other, and for a large part, what Loki decks are able to do is keep people honest by playing a variety of tech that then they can Loki away when it is irrelevant in a given game. And Blink decks can like kind of do some of a similar position, but often that is just like managed by the snap mechanic. And then we do also see that some tech is also useful in various strategies, potentially like Nocturne in Move. Snowguard in Loki is a great example of that, one because it's in Loki, but also just because it is tech that is also congruent with the strategy that you're playing. And I think the best example is Mobius in a Pixie deck, because even if Mobius is a dead card against a specific opponent, it's still always good in your deck because you can combo with Mobius and Pixie. And trying to think of another example of that is probably like Luke Cage in a Hazmat list. Luke Cage is there most commonly used proactively, but Luke Cage is still a tech card against certain opponents. Magneto can sometimes be like a tech card, but just also promotes your own game plan by being 12 power. And Annihilus, I think, is like pretty down that same line as well, where, oh, here's a great example. Carnage, Destroy. Really good when Annihilus is strong. It's good to be able to blow up your own stuff, but also Carnage is synergistic with some of the cards in your deck, allowing you to either reanimate them with Phoenix Force or just trigger your Deadpools and stuff. So all of that I think is really interesting stuff to think about. Hopefully you guys think it's interesting too, as I just scroll through a spreadsheet here for the first half of this video. Now onto the untapped.gg portion of the video, and I do want to say that this is not sponsored content, but Untapped did give me a free premium trial to showcase this feature, which is for premium users only if you're looking to try it out yourself. So there is, of course, a lot of great data on untapped.gg. This is the main metagame report that most people are typically looking at here, and there's a number of different ways that you can sort this data. There's also a number of different filters we can put on it, right? Based off like what we have in our collection. If you're looking for decks to play, this is the decks section, by the way. But you can sort it by game count, average cubes, or win rate. And then we were just previously looking at the metagame report, which is basically just a sorting by average cubes that the decks will earn. And I chose to have this only look at the top 10% of Infinite players, but here is the top 50%, and here is all ranks. Pretty similar stuff. And then you can also move this around so that you can see, and here's where we see Silver Surfer performing a little bit better. And I'm not sure exactly what I should showcase for this video. Maybe I should just be looking at Infinite, or maybe it should just be all ranks, but maybe it should be like all ranks 80 plus. There we're seeing a lot more ongoing and hella, which obviously once we put like bots into the mix, then things get a little bit funkier. But onto the decks section. That is obviously that's where you can sort by game count as well, and that gives you a little bit better idea for a representation of what decks people might be playing, what you're playing up against, not just how the decks are performing. Because you can look at the metagame and you can say, okay, well, here's the popularity, this is what is good. And I would actually say that metagame is kind of like a misnomer here, because in my mind, metagame, and this isn't something that like necessarily we have to break down in this video, but metagame isn't just how well decks perform. It's really about the popularity and then how well those decks perform against the most popular decks. And that is actually what the newest feature to Untap does, matchups. You can find this in the meta tab right up here. And what that will do is look at every single deck in Marvel Snap, or at least like the big ones or the ones that they think are important, because we also have Cerebro 5 up here in addition to Cerebro 2 and Cerebro 3. It says, okay, well, what are the win rates of this deck against every other deck that is popular, which I think is really cool. I'm blocking some of the stats here. Maybe I should just make myself super tiny and put myself in the corner. Yeah, that's fine. That way I'm not gonna block too much, or that I can even go up in the top again. Cool. So I think that this is a really cool tool for a number of reasons, but just let's say we think Loki is a really performing deck, and actually, you know what, I'll do it like this. Loki and Blink both made up 1/4 each of the tournament. So let's pin Blink to the top and let's pin Loki to the top. Now, if we look this way, we can see which decks Loki is good against and which decks Blink is good against. However, if we start looking down here, we can actually see that Patriot is a deck good against both of these. So yeah, Patriot, good against Blink, good against Loki. And oh, okay, will that do it? If I'm just kind of learning with this feature right now, but by pinning them, we can either go through manually and we can see, okay, Patriot's good, Hela's good, anything else have a positive win rate, Ongoing has a positive win rate against both of those decks, and looks like that might be it. I mean, both of these decks are at the top for a reason. And then the other way we could do it is we could just scroll down and we could see, okay, Ongoing has a positive win rate against both of these decks. And looks like we can, by hovering over, we can see a little bit more data just about what we're looking at here. We can see the average cubes in the matchup and how much of that data, how many games represents that data. And in this case, we've got 3,000 games Untapped is saying for Loki versus Ongoing. So I think that this is a really cool tool. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, if I was thinking about playing in a tournament, I might just consider Blink or Loki, because those do have the highest win rates overall. However, based off the specific tournament metagame that I just showcased, maybe Patriot specifically is actually what we want to do. And if we take a look at the actual results of those tournaments, there was a Patriot list in the top 4 of both of the events that were over last week. There was a Patriot in both of those top 4, so and not that many Patriot decks were being played. Hela, same thing. At least in the tournament that we looked at, there wasn't that much Hela, and Hela actually top 4'd the other event. But still, we can see that maybe Hela was able to do so well because it has really good matchups against both of those other 2 really popular decks. So I think that this is a really, really cool tool, and again, we can also, there's a few different ways to sort this. We can sort these by popularity, sort these by win rate. We can actually see that Ongoing, and okay, wait, maybe I was wrong about Move. Maybe some players have looked at some more data than I have to see Move actually has a pretty high win rate despite not being that popular of a deck. It's all the way down here next to Surfer, which is a pretty popular deck, I think. I don't know, I think it's great. Again, we can mess around with the player rank. We can just look at the top of Infinite, sort that by win rate, and see that up at the top, it's Darkhawk. That's kind of crazy. Darkhawk doing the best here by the top players. And yeah, this is pool 3 plus, but it doesn't matter because we got them in the Infinite top 10%. And I even think this is like kind of high. I'd kind of be curious if they'd be, there probably just isn't enough meaningful data to just look at like the top, I guess the top, wait, I'm in the top 1% of Marvel Snap players? Oh geez, all right, a little hoity-toity. I did not realize that. And then, yeah, we can also sort it by average cubes because we might be talking about ladder performance as opposed to tournament performance. In tournaments, I think you just care about win rate because while, especially open deckless tournaments where it's not like you're going to be able to get somebody for a bunch of cubes with a surprising card, I think that for the most part in tournament games, you gotta win and you just have to have the better matchup against your opponent. However, Marvel Snap, if we're talking the ladder, I think average cubes might actually be a little bit more important. And here we can see, okay, I was onto something there, at least, with no Shuri being represented. So I think the best way to use this as a tool is going to first be to sort by popularity, because I do think it's important to get an idea of what the metagame is. So in this case, Loki and Blink, yeah, they're already at the top because we are sorted by popularity in the Infinite top 10%. That's a little bit more indicative of what we're looking at in tournament play as well. But then if we want to take a look at average cubes specifically, maybe we go down this list and we pin anything that has high average cubes. Yeah, okay. So I might make some suggestions to the Untapped team as well after this video, just because what I would love to be able to do here is like, after identifying these, maybe even these 3 decks as the highest, I just want to see what has the highest win rate against this portion of the metagame as an aggregate. So we might look, I mean, Blink is fine. It trades against itself and it trades against Loki, which are, and then like is going to be pretty good against everything else. But maybe we look at this and we say Patriot is like a really great deck that then just has good results against both of these two. What else is good? Hela, Sage, which is, I believe, a Ravonna list. We can also hover over this right here. Oh no, it's Beast Bounce. Okay, where we are also seeing the Angela, Kitty, and Elsa package. So that makes sense. Destroy, not good. What else is good? It looks like that's basically it. So from here, let's pin Sage, Hela, and Patriot, and now we can look at just the stats of these, and we can probably sort this by average cubes to see among these 3, Sage is the top performing, and that might partially because of the surprise factor of people not knowing how to play against this deck, but we can see if this lines up well against matchups that we care about elsewhere. If we then start to see a bunch of junk, we might say, okay, well, maybe not Patriot, which makes sense. You get junked, it's then harder to play cards like Brood and things like that, though if your opponent's giving you rocks, you can pump those up with Patriot, so that part's kind of cool, but we'd much rather be playing Hela or Sage is what this data right here is telling me. So hopefully this has been an interesting insight into both the actual current metagame right now, but also just the idea of a metagame. If you're kind of unsure on that, or if this is like a new concept to you, the concept of a metagame is applicable even not just for tournament players. If you're playing on the ladder and let's say you notice a bunch of lockdown, a bunch of your opponents are playing lockdown, you can use untapped.gg to now just easily see what is going to be able to beat lockdown lists. So you're going to want to play Blink, maybe not Patriot. Destroy seems okay. Looks like definitely not Hela and Tribunal. Though interestingly, Tribunal specifically is good against Professor X, but it looks like it is not a good matchup here, at least by this data of 650 games. So I think that this is a really cool resource for that. There are some interesting aspects of metagames and laddering that I do think are important to consider. A lot of players talk about, well, oh, okay, it looks like I was playing something that was good for the metagame that I thought, and then I switch decks and then I start seeing totally different things. And while I don't actually buy that, I do think that it is important to recognize that just the nature of ladder systems when there are metagames. So let's say, to use these examples, let's say a bunch of people are playing Hela on the ladder and then players are playing a lockdown against them. So you're going to get sections of the ladder then where everyone is playing Hela, followed by a section where everyone is playing a lockdown, and then above that, you might get a section of the ladder where everyone is playing Blink. And there will kind of be like these tiers as you go up in the ladder. You'll hit pockets of metagames depending on how many given players. This was definitely something I noticed a lot of in Pokemon Go, where Pokemon by its nature is a very rock, paper, scissors type metagame. We do see a little bit less of that in Marvel Snap, less like type advantage and things, and even, you know, some confusing things here where decks have really good cards against decks that they are potentially otherwise bad at. And I think that that is why this is such a cool tool specifically from Untapped, because this is a question that has kind of dodged me up until this point in Marvel Snap. I would look at something like, I would look at the matchup like Hela and think that it would be good against Lockdown. And it's just hard to say in a vacuum with limited numbers of interactivity, a lot of decks just choosing to do their own thing, what makes a given deck good against another given deck. And I think that just having access to all of the data that Untapped does has allowed them to just boil it down and say, we don't really know why these things are happening, but at the very least, here's the numbers. Do that what you will. Don't play negative into Blink, but do play negative into Sage and Loki. That makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, we're only seeing a barely above 51% here, but Loki decks cannot make use of Mr. Negative. And this just gives you a great look. I guess Agatha, negative's really good against that. I think everything's bad, or everything's good against Agatha. But discard, apparently. Looks like mostly everything's good against discard too. Okay, apparently Mr. Negative is not that good right now. But if we take a look at another deck, what's a deck that can annoy people? Galactus, perfect. Sitting on 50% right now, it's not that good, but it is really good against the Tribunal decks, against the Sage decks, against the negative decks, and Surfer decks. Okay, yeah, some of that makes a decent amount of sense, and Toxic, and discard and Hela Tribunal, okay. But we can now say, okay, well, these decks happen to still be pretty good against Galactus, and it might not immediately make sense why. You might have to do some thinking, but like, okay, Destroy has Null in it. That makes some sense. Patriot, I'm honestly not sure why that one is here, especially because Patriot lists used to play Iron Man plus Onslaught, and now they don't do that. So I'm curious, what is making Galactus lists? Well, we can take a look at a Patriot list and see if anything looks like it would be good against Galactus. Oh, we can just hover over it. Leech, that'll do it. So Leech is a pretty good card here, and yeah, this is just another great way to look at what metagame specifics matter to you. what did we just say was good? We said the Sage decks was good, and then we also said the Patriot decks were good. And of course, this is something that we can always do on untapped.gg. Still, we can just look at, and right now it's sorted by game count, so we're gonna get the most popular lists first, and the most popular lists also have the most data, but we might just really be interested in the average cube rate among the top players. And then we can see, oh, it's actually like a Patriot blink list. And this is a great resource in terms of just like learning about new types of decks. I mean, yeah, I have not seen this before on the ladder, but now I'm super scared to fight up against a Patriot list that is also going to blink out an Ultron, an Onslaught, or maybe even just a Blue Marvel. So we all have that to look forward to, but for today, that's gonna be it for me. Thank you guys very much for watching. Oh wait, I just realized, okay, so this list does not have it, but you could just go Wasp Blink on turn 5 if you don't wanna like blink away your Super Scroll and you didn't draw Leech. That's pretty cool. That's gonna be it for me today. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.